Hi, I'm Bill O'Reilly. Thanks for watching us tonight. Is President Obama misusing his power? That is the subject of this evening's Talking Points memo. The answer is yes. He is misusing presidential power, but not in the way you might think. In the past, some presidents have misused their power in aggressive ways. Richard Nixon intimidating witnesses in the Watergate break-in. That led to his resignation. Lyndon Johnson misleading the American people about the war in Vietnam. And John Adams trying to suppress a free press using the Alien and Sedition Acts. But today we have a president who is misusing his power by not using it to solve vital problems. The evidence is clear on the border. We now know the Obama administration was told a year ago that organized criminals were beginning to smuggle children into the USA in great numbers. The president could have summoned the countries involved to a conference in Washington. He could have cracked down as soon as the cartels got into the people smuggling business. He did not. And now the USA will have to deal with about 100,000 desperate children. By the way, this coming Friday, the presidents of Guatemala, Honduras, and El Salvador will finally arrive in Washington for that conference. A bit late, don't you think? Then we have the ISIS terror army, which has taken over a third of Iraq. It's now persecuting Christians, killing some of them, forcing others from their homes. And what has President Obama done to the ISIS army? Has he bombed their caravans to and from Syria? Has he directed drones at their leaders in their headquarters? No, he has not. And U.S. intel warned the president that Islamic militants were gathering power in Syria. But he did nothing to stop that. And finally, Putin. There's no question that he armed the terrorists in Ukraine with rockets that shot down the Malaysian plane. Putin did it, just as he annexed Crimea, just as he provides advisors and weapons to these terrorists who are killing innocent human beings every day. President Obama slapped a few sanctions on Putin, but nothing like he could have done. You may remember that Talking Point suggested President Obama meet with American bankers and cut off all credit card receipts from Russia. That would have brought Putin to his knees. It's quite clear Mr. Obama does not want to lead in the traditional way. He apparently wants to ruminate about things, discuss, create consensus. The signal he consistently sends is that America will not right wrongs except in emergency circumstances. Problem is, the president does not see the border incursion as an emergency. He wouldn't even go down there. Nor does he see the ISIS army as an emergency. Nor does he see Vladimir Putin as a power-mad villain who needs to be neutralized. Instead, President Obama wants to ask German leader Merkel what she would like to do. Add it all up, you get a misuse of the power that we, the American people, bestowed on Barack Obama. Finally, let me give you one vivid example of how presidential power should be used. Mr. Obama calls a Mexican president up, Nieto. He gently tells him that unless Mexico's southern border is closed to all illegal alien traffic, U.S. trade agreements with Mexico will be suspended. And by the way, Marine Sergeant Tamaresi, imprisoned in Tijuana, he must be released within 24 hours on humanitarian grounds. So all Mr. Obama has to do, and those two problems be solved. And that's a memo. Now for the top story reaction. Join us from Washington, Fox News analyst Charles Krauthammer. So you agree 100% with that memo. I can read your body language.
I think I'm in the high 30s right here, right now. No, look, I think basically what you're saying about Obama not using his power, I think that's the key point. He misuses his power on domestic issues, where he, as the executive, he takes over, writes the laws, changes the law, cancels the law, undoes laws, which you're not supposed to do. But on foreign affairs, I think he is simply so much over his head. He doesn't know what to do, and when he doesn't know what to do, he does nothing. He talks. He urges. He tries to use moral suasion on a thug like a Putin, and then he's surprised that nothing actually happens. On the border issue, I think it's interesting. I think on that issue, he's immobilized, not because he's over his head as he is in Ukraine or in Libya or elsewhere, but because he's so politically cynical. On the one hand, he's got his left and his strong support from some Hispanic activists who would oppose him if he did anything serious about closing the border, particularly in this particular situation. On the other hand, he's got the rest of the country that is appalled and aghast that we have lost control of the border and we have a crisis, which is essentially of his own making in not enforcing the border. So he's immobilized. He doesn't do one or the other. So instead, he does nothing. And he makes a few speeches and denounces Republicans and pretends that if somehow they had passed comprehensive immigration reform, it would have averted this. Of course, it would have done nothing of the sort. If anything,
it would have encouraged it.
Of course, if you
would have encouraged more people if they had, look, pathway to citizenship. Come here.
If you pass an amnesty, you create a magnet for more illegal immigration.
My question is not a policy question tonight, because we've gone over that last week with you and with our other contributors here. My question is, I believe that President Obama doesn't see the border as a crisis, doesn't see the ISIS army as a crisis. He doesn't see Putin as this world menace. And he may see Iran as a crisis, but he just wants to string it on out because, as you said rightly, he doesn't know what to do. So he's basically living in a fantasy world, and that's dangerous for the country if the president's living in a fantasy world, right?
I think that's true, and I think it was obvious from the first 6 months of his administration. I was saying at the beginning, I wrote in a column and in a speech at the end of 2009 that this was a man, it was called Decline as a Choice. It happens to be the last chapter in my book, which is available at bookstores everywhere. But, you know, when I wrote about Decline as a Choice, I simply looked at what Obama did and said when he came into office. He goes abroad and he talks about the misuse of American power. He apologizes for, he didn't even apologize, he simply confesses America's sins, from Hiroshima to the maltreatment of Indians, to disrespect for Muslims, to lack of regard for Europe. I mean, the list is long and astonishing. This is a man who does not have faith in the goodness of what America has done abroad.
And that,
he will concede it for some things, but he largely sees it as misused, and therefore the fantasy world he lives in is one in which if American power is withdrawn, the world heals. And of course, precisely the opposite.
But a logical thinker, then, if they started off the way you described, and then they saw how all of the problems are worsening, all right, then would say, you know, maybe I was wrong. But I'll tell you what, I think he's so disassociated from reality. We're going to talk about his golfing and all of that in a minute, coming up after you, that right now President Obama is locked into this ideological fantasy world, the kind of world that they teach at Harvard, where you adjudicated and so did I. They teach a fantasy world at Harvard, a world of what should be, not of what is. And therefore, when you see what is, you turn away and say, you know, no, I'm not going to deal with that. I really believe that's what's causing all of this stuff. Last word.
I'd like to blame Harvard, and it is responsible for 90% of the world's ills, but not this one. Obama's fantasies about the world predate Harvard. You go back to what he was doing in Columbia, University, where he not only supported the nuclear freeze, which was a nutty idea, he thought that we should essentially unilaterally disarm on nuclear weapons. He has always had the view that American power abroad is destabilizing, often unjust, and brings bad consequences. If anything, it's the Iraq War that made that even more of a strong, and as you say, it's the basic element of his ideology. It's almost a religious idea for him. And therefore, he believes, you withdraw our power, the world improves. And you're right. All the evidence has shown that he's wrong, but nonetheless, he persists.
He persists.
And that's the definition of a fanatical belief, and he seems to have it.
All right. Charles Pratt, everybody. Things That Matter is the book he was referring to. Next on The Rundown.